Earlier, we recognized the difference between an active and a passive verb. An active verb indicates when the action is done by the subject, so the elephant crushes the peanut, versus a passive verb, which indicates the action being done to the subject, so the peanut is crushed by the elephant. We also took a look at how to create the present passive system in Latin, and we know that we need to use these endings now instead of our OST endings. The R tends to indicate that it's a passive verb. So in order to create the present passive system, we need to know how to make the present, imperfect, and future tenses of the verb. If we take a look at our principal parts of the verb, we're going to use the second principal part to build all three of these tenses. We'll take the stem, we'll take the connecting vowel, and then we'll take the appropriate ending, whether it's present, imperfect, or future. Now, the perfect passive system is actually made completely differently. Instead, we need to go back and look at all of our principal parts. The perfect passive system, which includes the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect, is now going to use the fourth principal part. It finally has a use. So we'll bring that fourth principal part down, but we need to include something else. In order to make a perfect passive system verb, we also need to include a form of the verb to be, which is like sum, est. Now the tense that we use of sum actually indicates the tense of our passive verb. So a perfect tense verb in the passive voice will use the fourth principal part, and it will use one of the present forms of to be. So the fourth principal part would be followed by sum, est, or summus estis sunt. So together it would look like this as two separate words. Amatus est. He has been loved. And we get the person from the form of to be. Because that ends with a T, we know it's a he, she, or it subject. Now the pluperfect tense is actually going to be used by taking the fourth principal part and then using the imperfect of to be, the eram, eros, erat forms. So instead of saying amatus est, which was perfect, we'll make it pluperfect by changing it to amatus erat. And that addition of erat now makes it he had been loved, putting it in the pluperfect tense. Finally, to make the future perfect tense, we follow the same pattern. We take the fourth principal part still, and then we add the future form of to be, which is ero, eris, erit. And once again, it's two separate words. The person is indicated by the T on the form of to be, and this would now be translated as he will have been loved. Now the fourth principal part that we're going to use to build this verb is actually an adjective. So it must use GNC, gender, number, case, to represent your subject. The gender ending of the adjective will always be based upon what your subject is. The number will always be, again, based on verb and the subject. So if you have a plural subject, then your adjective will be plural. And the case of your adjective will always be nominative, since you're always describing the subject. For example, let's take a look at the verb in every gender, and let's use the perfect passive form. Amatus est means he has been loved, and I know it's he because of the us and the est. The est, the T indicates he, she, or it. The us indicates that it's a masculine subject. Now, if I wanted a feminine subject, I would still keep the est because it's she, but I would change that us to a. And if I wanted to indicate a neuter subject, I would change that us to But we also have to indicate the plurality of this. So instead of using est, which is singular, if I want to indicate they, I would change the est to sunt. Now, anytime I go into the plural, I'm going to have to also change the adjectives ending, that fourth principal part ending. So amatus is singular, but amati is plural, masculine. Amata is singular, feminine, but amatai is feminine, plural. And amatum is neuter, singular, but amata is neuter, plural. So we do have to make sure that if we change the form of to be to a plural, the ending of the adjective must change too. And this works the same for the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. The only thing that will change between the tenses is the form of to be that's used. So let's take a look at how this works with an actual subject added into the sentence. Rex captus est. Now, based upon the est, I know it's a he, she, or it subject. The us lets me know it's masculine. So if I take a look, Rex is masculine, it's our king, so this works out as my subject. So we have the king was captured, or the king has been captured. They're both appropriate translations. Now we can also then add in the ablative of agent, a haste. So the king has been captured by the enemy. Now if we were to make that plural, we have to change rex to reges, which would be nominative plural. The agent can stay the same since that's not being affected. The captus would have to change to the capti to indicate that it's plural, and the est would then change to sunt to indicate that it's now they, not he. Now let's look at a feminine one. Regina capta est. The queen has been captured. We can still put in the ablative of agent, so the queen has been captured by the enemy. If we wanted to make it plural, we'll change everything to plural except for the agent. Regina changes to reginae. Agent stays the same. Capta changes to captai. And then est changes to sunt. And finally for the neuter. Regnum captum est. The kingdom has been captured. And we can also add the agent in, a haste, by the enemy. So if I were to change this plural now, regnum would change to regna because it's neuter. A haste would stay the same. Captum would change to capta. And then est would change to sunt.